So I know your son passed away, and I'm sorry about that, but would you be willing to talk about what happened?
What happened to Patrick, my son Patrick, born on Valentine's Day, so we never forget this child. He was at a rock and roll concert in Georgia and driving late at night back to school and fell asleep. So there was a car accident, and the passenger survived, and Patrick, as the driver, did not survive. So he was 19 when that happened. Thing, because it's not a normal thing to lose a child. You've heard, I know you've read places that it's not normal for parents to survive when their children don't. You learn things that people have told you about your child. So even though Patrick was not with us, we still continue to learn about him and this absolutely magical reach he had with a lot of people. And that really gives you the impetus to get up in the morning and keep going. Over the years, then, how do you deal with that? I'm assuming you want to know that. Some days really suck. And we have learned to just give into that. It doesn't matter what the trigger is. It could be a song, it could be somebody you run into, an old girlfriend, a family friend who has something they want to tell you, or they were reminded about Patrick, something like that. And depending on what else is going on in your life, some days can really be stinky. I felt responsible, one for my husband, and then for my two other boys. So it was just my job. I made it my job to make sure that we were just together. We stayed together. We talked about things. We didn't try to push things under the carpet and not deal with them. I think for the first time in my life, as an adult, in my 50s, I learned how to listen. And I practice that every day. It started with my family, but then it's just friends and the people you meet along the way, whether it's work-related or socially. You know, listening is just, I believe it's an art form. And you just really learn so much about people, but you also are letting those people be heard. Death is something that, as a culture, we don't talk about. You learn to work around that and craft your life and live your life as best you can, taking care of the people around you and the people you come in contact with.
So you were able to deal with Patrick passing away by talking with other people, but also listening?
Well, that's part of it. I tried to. I did not want to be a statistic. Statistically, marriages fall apart when there's been a death of a child, because the grief is so profound and so deep and just raw. Some people just get stuck there, and they're not built emotionally to come back from that. And sometimes that's maybe best for the relationship. Nothing else was very important to me other than keeping my arms wrapped around my family and keeping us close. I went to a grief counselor. He said, Tressa, you got to put the broom down, put the mop back in the closet, stop doing the chores, and that's when Patrick will make himself known to you. And don't you know that there was, maybe months later, I had a very, very vivid dream. Regency Theater was still operational up there, and we were standing in line at the movies behind a red rope line. And in the dream, all three boys were with me. It was very common for us to go to the movies together. And Patrick says to me in the dream, you have three boys, you will always have three boys, I will always be here for you, Mom. That was my acknowledgement from him that he may not be here, but he is with me. So when I run into people who have a similar situation, for instance, or they lose someone who's very close to them, I repeat something that I was told by my best friend in the whole world. have known her for 65 years. And 2 days after Patrick died, she was in my backyard, flew in from California, and said, "You will come to learn how to live with Patrick in a different way." So that's my advice to people as they try to navigate their way through the grief process. Coming to terms with the loss, but always that's a part of the process of getting to those points, is coming to learn to live with someone in a different way. I think that it's important for me, having been through this, to let my experience be shared with people, because I think it makes them feel better about it. And really calms them down in a way that they can try to wrap their arms around it and figure out a way to maybe inch forward.
Do you think there's anything like us boys can learn about your story with Patrick?
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned. First of all, if it happens to a friend of yours, or a friend of a friend, it doesn't matter how close you are to that person, don't shy away. Don't hide and pull back. Be there. It's very important to be there. I know kids particularly struggle with what to say, and they don't know what to say. Most adults don't know what to say. Try to avoid cliches. Just be there for the person. And if you have to go through a line and shake somebody's hand or say, "I'm sorry," just, Richard was a friend of mine. I'll miss Richard. Or something along those lines. It's a hard thing to do, but I think it's better to do that hard thing first and kind of get used to it, because that's not going to be the last time you're going to need to know how to navigate that situation. Culturally, boys have been taught, or they learn, or they think they got to suppress all that and keep it under wraps. Not a good thing, because what happens is it gets pushed down to a certain point, and then it reveals itself in behaviors that even the person can't explain. You lash out at the wrong person. Growth in your emotional health is just as important as your physical growth and your intellectual growth. Because the world is about interacting with people, whether it's boys and girls, grown-ups and children, the difference between generations. It's a part of communicating. And you can feel really bad about a classmate whose father dies, for instance, and don't know how to deal with that. But it's really important to acknowledge this to yourself. Okay, I don't know how to deal with this, but I know it's important for me to be there for my friend. We just worked really hard to keep the family talking to one another, even over time. And you develop an antenna as to when things aren't so good, but to not sublimate those feelings and talk to them. So here, I don't want you to be afraid to ask me a question. I don't want guys to not talk to me because I can talk about other things other than son who works at Snapchat. Youngsters think that they're bulletproof, that bad things aren't going to happen to them, when in fact they do happen, and you're not bulletproof. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is then to not live your life in fear of a bad thing happening to you. No, you should be out there enjoying it. You're young. You should be taking chances and trying new things, for sure. But make sure that you tell the people who love you that you love them back, just every day. It's important to say. Don't put off expressing the way you feel about the people who love you. I can walk away from here and say, "Patrick, thank you for getting me through that." And I will. Just to myself, I'll walk down the path back to my office. Because he, I believe, wants me to tell you these things. It's his voice. It's how I've learned to navigate my life without him. That's my words today on what it's like to lose a child and deal with it and live with it after the fact.